Hello. Let me turn this up so I can hear myself. Hello, everybody. I am. We're going to take a look at this video that somebody initially shared just a clip of this in the Discord server. So thank you very much. I think it was Coco. Thank you very much for doing that. And then they gave me a link to the full video here. I'm trying to find this particular moment from the debate here that I want to make sure. No, that happens earlier. They only say. Oh man, let's see here. There's this particular point where they're talking about the age of the Earth, and Will Duffy just goes full Kent Hovind and full flat earther with the talking points. And it happens at around the 42-minute mark. So let me write that down so I don't forget, because I have no idea how much of this we're going to actually check out today. But we're going to go through it together using the power of friendship. Before we do that, though, what are the people saying? Hey, there's no question or anything attached to that, but thank you. Exist Dissolve for the $2. I'll try not to spend it all in one place. Hey, they were the first commenter too. What an absolute alpha move. Who's getting cooked? Well, Will Duffy is getting cooked, unfortunately. Yeah, I found out about this. I've known since like December, a while. I just never really he didn't really talk about it. So there wasn't anything for me to look at really, but then somebody shared this. Where are the guns? Where are the armed penguins? Those penguins bought those guns from us, but they don't give us anything in return. That's why they're getting tariffed, everybody.
Well, boom. Okay, let's get straight to it. Nobody is here to listen to me tonight. Nobody, Doom, as much as I love you, mate, nobody's here to listen to you. We have two people in the house who, and I will come to you, Doom, before we pass on, but I'm going to keep this super, super short. PhD Tony is an absolute legend. He's been so helpful to me in lots and lots of debates. I have an awful lot of what this man has forgotten is more than I think I will ever know.
Just so everybody knows, I'm going to play this pretty fast. Is that Culture Cats? Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so I know of like 3 or 4 YouTube channels that all have cats spelled that way in them. There's Conspiracy Cats. And I said that, but now I can't remember the name of any of the other one. Yeah, Culture Cats, Conspiracy Cats. I think I've seen another one. And then this. So I was actually wondering that earlier. I was like, is there a guy who goes by Catsy who has like a bunch of channels or something? So Dr. Katz on Comedy Central. I don't know what that means.
About a lot of technical things. Will, this will be the third time I've spoke to him. He's been unbelievably generous with his time. And in all my dealings with him, has been an absolute super, super chill, super nice guy. So I'm stoked that the two of them have decided to have this conversation on this channel.
Figuring out the best
all I'm going to say, before I pass you to Doom, or other than, if there are any questions, we've decided pre-stream, we're going to save a block of time for all the questions and any super chats as well to be read out at the end of the stream. So we're not going to be interrupting the chat for questions or super chats or anything like that. From
boring.
Okay, I'm PhD Tony. I'm a research geophysicist. I have training in geophysics, obviously, paleo sea level in particular, with some training in climate physics, ancient medieval history, and climate geochronology. And most people in this community will have some familiarity with me yelling at people.
Awesome. So I am not a PhD Will. I'm just Will Duffy. For those of you that don't know me, I'm kind of known in these circles as the creator of The Final Experiment. I wanted to say a couple of things at the outset here, which are actually super important. Number one, since I'm not a PhD, I'm not a geologist, I actually have no training whatsoever in any field of science. So why am I having this conversation? I like these conversations for a couple of reasons. One, I actually don't fear being wrong. I think a lot of people do. Flat earthers definitely do. That's why they're so heavy on the censorship. If somebody has an idea that they don't understand or don't know, they'll just immediately block them, ban them, not talk to them. I don't fear being wrong. I think everyone should get to a point in their lives, and it's a struggle, to admit to yourself that you can't be right about everything. And so you're wrong about something. You're probably wrong about quite a few things. And you try to figure out what those things are so that you can learn more truth. So when I have these conversations, I expect to learn new things. I expect to take things away that I can go research. So that's one of the main reasons that I'm having this conversation. The second thing I want to say is this, which is there are two main differences. So I've been hearing a lot that flat Earth and young Earth creationism are like the same thing. They're both the same level of science denial. People even say that young Earth is worse than flat Earth. So that's just not logical. And I'm going to give two reasons, and then that can kick off our conversation, Tony. The first one is that
I don't think it's worse. And I do say it's as bad. And I've sort of clarified that before. I would say it's equally as wrong. I would say flat Earth is dumber and less forgivable because anybody, you don't have to be a scientist. You don't really have to do, you don't have to do experimental science. You don't require really any tools to prove that the Earth is not flat. Whereas to disprove young Earth creationism, you would technically have to do science, or you can just read about it for yourself. But like, I will say that if flat Earth is F tier, F for flat Earth, young Earth creationism is D tier for dumb, I guess.
the shape of the Earth is something that we can establish presently. We live on the Earth. We can measure the Earth. We can take pictures of the Earth. And so that is a
Yuck, more like yuck.
huge difference in talking about something that happened in the past. As soon as we're talking about the past, especially the distant past, we're now going to have to enter in assumptions, and a lot of assumptions, and we're going to try to have to figure out what's going on. So it's objectively more difficult to determine things that happened in the past by the nature of the fact that we weren't there and we aren't there, and it's not something that's in the present. The second difference,
Exactly what fucking Ken Ham and Kent Hovind said. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
between young Earth and flat Earth, which is huge, is that flat Earth has no experts. They have no scientists. They have no PhDs, no doctors, no pilots. So if anybody is a flat Earther claiming to be a pilot or a doctor, they're usually lying. Okay, that's been established for years. Young Earth creationism has PhDs in, I think, every field of science. They have actual experts. And I think there's hundreds of actual scientists, name the field: geology, physics, astronomy, paleontology, you name it. There are young Earth creationists who have PhDs in those topics. So that's a huge difference. And as me being someone who doesn't have an expertise in this, I do listen to both sides. I'm going to be listening to Tony tonight, who has a PhD, presenting one perspective, but I also listen to young Earth creationists that have PhDs that have another perspective. And so I don't think likening young Earth creation to flat Earth is valid. And let's kick off the conversation with that.
Okay, so just as a quick response, none of the subject matter experts that you referenced there are capable of getting their young Earth data past peer review, which instantly casts a question mark over their methodology and their returns. And many of them, Russell Humphreys, for instance, gets around the heat problem by saying that when God opened the heavens, as the Bible relates, it opened a fourth dimension through which all the energy could escape. This is completely unscientific. There's no way of verifying this. There's no way of contradicting it. It's just not science. And that's the sort of expert that you're appealing to.
Kind of nice of Tony there to not say that it's false. What somebody like Aaron Ra would say is that it is false, what you just said. But Tony's just saying it's completely unscientific and it couldn't get past peer reviewed, and it's not, it's an epistemologically worthless claim. He didn't say that specifically, but that is the implication.
And when you're appealing to science, it's important that you're appealing to mainstream science and reputable science. And so that's what I hope to be discussing today. The evidence that I will be presenting is peer-reviewed. The other point that I would make, and I apologize for my language, is the old aphorism that money talks and bullshit walks. Geochronology is actually fundamentally important in mineral exploration. Mining companies invest a significant amount of money in geochronological analysis so that they can more precisely work out where they should be exploring for mineral forming complexes. No young earth creationist can do this. So where money is on the line, it's the peer-reviewed, it's the systematic peer-reviewed work that yields results. It is not young earth creationism. And if young earth creationists want their work to be taken seriously, they need to be able to do the real world work. If we make the analogy to flat earth,
so if you don't know what he's talking about, essentially like oil companies, they operate under the working assumption that the Carboniferous period was this unique period. They basically take for granted, I'll make it simple. They take for granted all of the secular science for what it says, and they base where they look for oil on that, and they've been wildly successful. There is no young earth creationism science or worldview or anything that could possibly lead to any economic success. In fact, there was a biblical an oil company that based their, I don't know, they had a biblical worldview, essentially. That's how they did their work, and they went bankrupt.
There are no flat earth pilots. There are no young earth commercial geochronologists. It just doesn't happen. I know there's Snelling and and other geologists who, in the literature, use geochronological techniques, and then in their spare time go off and say how rubbish they are. Well, the mining companies that ultimately supply the funding for these geochronological studies, they don't agree. With that, I'd like to make a presentation.
Sorry.
If I could. Yeah.
Hey, Tony, I want to respond to that before you do your presentation. So something I've learned in the flat earth movement is that Jaron especially has taught me this, is when they were lied to and when they were shown things that weren't accurate, that really helped them want to keep their flat earth belief. And that is true with young earth creationism. So I'm going to tell you, I don't have evidence of this today, but I am certain that this idea that they can't get past peer review is not because of bad science, but it's because of either the fact that they're a young earth creationist or their conclusion. And I will make it a point to go find examples of that, but I'm certain that's the case. And I can.
Sorry, I was eating carrots, but I mean, the cope on that is just so insane that now he's in the realm of, this is also why it's exactly like flat earth. Now he's in the realm of conspiracy. It's because they're, and I don't think Duffy necessarily would actually make this claim, but the commonly regurgitated trope of they hate Christianity. They're trying to, like, he sounds like Candace Owens and Kent Hovind had a baby. Oh God. Oh man. Sorry. Jeez. Anyways, yeah, it's just everything's a conspiracy against us. It's like, no, scientists know how to do good science, and young earth creationism, the science is always flawed because it's a conclusion in search of an argument or evidence, which is fundamentally flawed.
Give you a firsthand example of this, where the mainstream science community was unwilling to do actual science that I was involved in paying for. Now, this is big for me, and it's one of the reasons I'm young earth. So let me tell everybody a story, which is incredibly fascinating. Mary Schweitzer and Jack Horner discovered a T-Rex fossil in Montana, and the leg bone was too big to get out, so they had to cut it in half. When they did that, they found inside of the T-Rex leg bone what looked like a biological material, but they didn't know what it was. Mary Schweitzer comes out and says, you guys, this is original biological material. This is not a fossil. This is not a rock. And the science community hung her. And so I was part of a group. We offered Jack Horner and Mary Schweitzer $23,000 to do a carbon-14 test on the biological material. The call is recorded. This is all online. Jack Horner said no. And we said, Jack, why won't you want to do science? Because that's what you do with biological material, is you 14C test it. And he said, we don't want the young earth creationists to run with this. So that right there is a perfect example, Tony, where the science community.
Fair enough. but not fair enough, because that result would do nothing against the completely overwhelming amount of evidence to the contrary. There's this old commercial, and maybe you guys have seen the video, where this guy's standing at a desk and he has a stack of papers this high, and there's this lady talking to him, and he says, well, I have all of these studies that say no. And then he grabs a piece of paper and he goes, and then there's this one study that says yes. And she snatches it out of his hand and says, I thought so. And then she walks away all proud. Oh, man. Anyways.
Is unwilling to do actual real science if they're afraid it's going to go against the mainstream narrative.
Oh, that's from a sketch. Oh, I thought it was a commercial. I saw it on YouTube a while back and it looked like a commercial. Okay, I gotcha.
With all due respect, Will, I've actually peer reviewed papers on geochronological and paleo sea level data, and I think you're misinterpreting what happened there through a particular ideological lens. But let's get in. So one of the things that you're unaware of is just the amount of data that we have that completely destroys a young Earth and the credibility of a young Earth position. So maybe rather than swapping stories backwards and forwards, we should move on to what that evidence actually is. Does that sound fair?
Let's do it. Yeah, it does. But again, this is important, is people need to know that they are finding original biological material inside of dinosaur bones. And even though Jack Horner turned down our grant offer, now in the peer-reviewed journals like Nature and Science, they have now done carbon-14 testing and it tests positive for carbon-14. So we can move on.
Okay, just let me. Oh, that's fantastic. There's okay, so I can't present PDFs here. Is this right? Sorry.
You can present. You can share a screen. So if you open the PDF and put it on the screen, you can share the screen with the PDF on.
Okay, and sharing.
Yeah, they're using what I use, and the only thing you can share are web pages.
Okay, all right, there you go. All right, is that my entire screen? Okay.
You guys can't hear it. Okay, it's really loud on my end, but I'll just turn my volume down.
We're not seeing it yet. Have you?
All right.
Oh no, we're seeing it now. Sorry, Tony, my bad.
Okay, so there are multiple bodies of evidence relating to how old something is. The most basic form is rhythmites. These are growth cycles of geological or biological material that has a seasonal component. The most famous of these is tree ring data. It's not perfect, but we have tree ring data going back 13,000 years. We can cross-correlate that with what's called VAV data, which are layerings associated with seasonal variations in the flow in rivers or sediment deposition in lakes, and these go back 30,000 years. Here's a brief introduction. So 6,000 years would be that little red box in the lower right corner. The highly jagged line is the dendrochronological data. The smoother line is the VAV data. We've also got ice core data. Ironically, Antarctica is one of the places where you could have most easily seen the geochronological data of just how old the Earth is, or why it isn't 10,000 years old. We also have layers within speleothems, which are stalagmites and stalactites. You'll note here the ages go back to 100,000 years. I'm sorry, 100,000 years, yes. We also get growth rings in corals. Now we can take all these data sets and we can plot them up against one another, and we can cross-correlate. We can do what's called wiggle matching based on the abundance of cosmogenic radionuclides, which I'll get into. These are particular isotopes that are generated by cosmic ray impacts, and they vary from year to year because they're affected by the strength of Earth's magnetic field, which varies year to year. So we can take these records and we can intercompare them, and we get consistent results.
The crazy thing about this stuff is, I'm a science communicator, whatever, but I'm not a scientist. And I get humbled a lot by stuff like this because I know how to explain to somebody that the Earth is billions of years old, that evolution is true, that the Earth isn't flat. I think I could explain to anybody who's not brainwashed, insane, or just too functionally stupid to get it, those facts. And there are simple ways of doing it. But the reality of how we know these things to deep levels, like what he's talking about here, is actually mind-blowingly complicated and beyond me and beyond most of us. And it's just a shame that I don't know more, but I'm still young. I'll figure it out.
Through these various different styles. So this particular plot shows tree ring data, it shows speleothem data, it shows ice core data, and it shows coral data. And you can see that all of the data sets give a very consistent pattern of what's been happening in the past.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, that's cool. Because that's something I like to bring up. That data he had there. This is multiple data sets overlaid on top of each other. Because what creationists will do is they will wave away everything. You could give them you present them one thing at a time and they just hand wave it away. Oh, that could have been because of blank. That could have been because of blank. That could have been because of blank. Now, like with I don't know, if you're talking about, like, in a sense, if we're trying to explain how likely is it that something happened, well, when you take unlikely events and you say all of these unlikely events each happened, you have to multiply the probabilities of all of those together, and then that can tell you, well, the overall, like, you could maybe believe each claim individually, but for all of them to be the case, the odds of that are that they become vanishingly small because of that. This is not exactly that, but I don't know. I think it's kind of similar. What the creationist does is they just hand wave, they toss away everything individually. But then what you do is you show them, well, all those individual things I showed you, if each of them were false, then they can't reinforce one another. And I like to bring this up over and over and over again. If they have nothing to do with it, if the narrative is false and this is just spurious data, then the data can't correlate, but it correlates to extremely high degrees. And so now what you're doing is you're basically saying it's just a coincidence, to me, is a low probability every time. And you're stacking up every claim of it's just a coincidence and trying to rest on that.
The data sets give a very consistent pattern of what's been happening in the past. The ice core data in particular goes back to 880,000 years. Now, if the young Earth creation hypothesis were correct, then that orange curve should get smaller as you go back in time. That's dust particles. The orange, I'm pretty sure that's dust particles. Yeah. So if those bottom layers were introduced more quickly, there should be less dust in them because there's less opportunity for dust to be included in those ice layers. But that's not what we see. We don't see the magnitude of the dust signal reducing as a function of time. One of the things that I want to point out here is if you look at the can you guys see my cursor? Oxygen isotope ratio. So it's the ratio of oxygen 18 to oxygen 16. And you'll see that it's very similar to the deuterium anomaly. This is the ratio of deuterium to normal hydrogen. And down the bottom, you can see a very similar looking curve, but this is from a completely different data set. This is from ocean core data, and you can see that the scale is upside down because as the delta O18 ratio in the ice core rises, the delta O18 ratio in the ocean falls. So you've got an exchange of oxygen isotopes between the ice sheets and the ocean core. Okay. And this leads into, now these ocean cores, they're based on foraminifera that are found in ocean cores. Here's a map of where we get them from, and here's a map of...
Okay. I kind of know about a lot of this stuff. I just want to hear what Duffy has to say, though.
Here's cores that are a million years. God, these are...
You think I'm evading you? 13 years old. Was a mentor of mine. Sure. But by the way, my wife's grandfather, who's passed away, was a mentor of mine. And he taught me when I was like 19 or 20 years old that if I'm ever going to give a presentation to a large group of people, to design it as if the audience was fifth graders. It sounded weird at the time, but I actually think it was good advice. So I like to start big picture where even like my kids could possibly understand it. So Tony, I'm going to respond to what you said. I don't want you to think I'm evading you. I've noticed that science cannot date things that are living, and science cannot date things accurately that we saw with our own eyes be created. Do you see the issue with that when we're going to take a firm stance that science can tell us things that happened millions and billions of years ago?
No.
Oh man, I totally didn't catch any of that. because I was distracted by the Nazi in the comments section. There we go. Problem solved. Okay,
things
backing up.
you. I've noticed that
Not comment section, chat.
science cannot date things that are living, and science cannot date things accurately that we saw with our own eyes be created. Do you see the issue with that when we're going to take a firm stance that science can tell us things that happened millions and billions of years ago?
No. So this is like saying my dentist cannot detect cavities in my teeth with an aircraft radar. Therefore, aircraft radar is useless over distances of a kilometer. It's exactly the same thing.
Let me try to elaborate.
saying
That was a very strange comparison. No, it's like saying no murder has ever been solved. Now, they can't be absolutely proven, but the idea that we can't solve them it's just so incredibly stupid.
that a measurement.
I don't think it's the same thing.
No, please, I'm in the middle of speaking. You're saying that a measurement tool doesn't work on small scales, therefore it can't be trusted on large scales. That's exactly the argument you're making, and it's
Is that, I thought maybe I misheard it, but I thought Duffy just said that we can't. Let me just back up again.
We saw with our own eyes, kids could possibly understand it. So, Tony, I'm going to respond to what you said. I don't want you to think I'm evading you. I've noticed that science cannot date things that are living, and science cannot date things accurately that we saw with our own eyes be created.
Okay, now I understand what he's saying. But we can date things that are living. We can date trees. We can date there are growth rings in teeth. He has to probably be referencing those two studies where they dated the snail and it turned out to be many thousands of years old, but that's because of carbon sinks in water. That's a known phenomena. That's
Do you see the issue with that when we're going to take a firm stance that science can tell us things that happened millions and billions of years ago?
No. So over distances of a kilometer, it's exactly the same argument you're making, and it's untrue. It's also untrue that we can't date things that are living. That's absolutely untrue. We know exactly how to do that. You're probably referring to what's called carbon reservoir, ocean reservoir corrections.
No.
You're not?
So, no.
What are you referring to?
People, human beings. If I brought you a human being, any random age, you cannot date them.
Yes, we can.
There is no method to date them. The only way to date them is to trust the birth certificate or to have a video of when they were born.
To the internet. The pelvis, the most reliable bone for age estimation, is the pubic symphysis. Yeah, because it becomes like it hardens and changes. Ribs, never heard of that before. Skull sutures, you could do that. Tooth wear in older adults. Tooth eruption patterns, epiphyseal fusion. So these are just going to give you estimates. Microscopic analysis of bone tissue can reveal age-related changes. DNA method. I've heard tooth layers and age. When your teeth develop, they form growth lines. These layers. Okay. Finding using tooth layers to determine biological age. We're just going to pop that into Google here. I'll show you guys what I'm doing. Using tooth layers to determine biological age. Okay. Human age estimation from tooth cementum and dentum. This can be done. I don't know. Let's see what they say about it.
Okay. You just made a. You
Do I live in Japan? No, I live in California.
just made you've baited and switched. You've said we can't date living organisms, and now you're talking about humans.
Well,
We
humans
can
are
date
living organisms.
Yes, some human organisms don't provide systematic layering, but actually we can. For instance, if somebody was alive during the atomic bomb testing, we can certainly detect if they were. We can, and that's a character. That's a category error. Saying that human beings are living things, therefore we can't date living things. That's absolutely untrue.
Okay.
We can date living corals. We do date living corals. We can date trees. We do date living trees. We can date fish from the little osteoliths that accumulate in their ears because they have growth rings. There's plenty of stuff. There's plenty of living stuff that we can very accurately date.
Okay, so hold on a second. I'm just trying to give everybody how my mind works. And so and again, I can drop the humans after I say this part, but we can't even date a baby in the womb, okay? Pregnancy is dated from the woman's last menstrual cycle because there is no accurate way to date and figure out when conception occurred. So my point is, if we struggle to date living things, I think we need to at least have a pause when we're going to be dating things that are millions and billions of years old. That's all. That's the only point I'm trying to make.
Okay, I mean, intuitively, that doesn't sound like the dumbest argument ever, but I would maintain that Earth is fun. Like, living organisms are vastly more complex than the geological cycle, for example. So, like with radiometric dating, it's technologically difficult to do, but it's actually it's actually very simple. Whereas a living organism, is much more complex. So, yeah, it seems like a weird sort of, like Tony said, either a category error or not even a compositional fallacy, but like a bait and switch, I guess.
And I'll tell you something that's in your field. And again, I'm taking your word for the things you're saying. I'm taking the young Earth creation.
Yeah, you're right with regard to that. And later on, there's a particular part of this that I saw, and later on, you'll see he uses that kind of tactic.
Word for the things they're saying. There is a young Earth creationist, PhD geologist who's a fellow Aussie. Okay, his name is Andrew Snelling, and he dated.
Yes, I mentioned him previously.
Yeah, there's something that was discovered in Australia. It was some sort of petrified wood, and it was both carbon-14 dated and potassium argon dated, and the difference in the dates was wildly different.
Well, no shit, because I haven't heard this specific example before, but there is an amount of background radiation from carbon-14 that exists in nature, and it's indistinguishable from carbon-14 that's undergone a certain number of half-lives, because the fact that it has such a short half-life of only about 5,800 years. So you start with your sample. We have 100% of our sample. After one half-life, we only have half of it left. And then we have, so 2 half-lives, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Sorry, I have to sneeze. Sorry about that. So after 10 half-lives, we have less than 1/10 of the original parent material, right? So 10 half-lives would only be 58,000 years. That is roughly the cutoff that experts in this field have known about for decades. You can't, like, it theoretically has the capacity to date things beyond that. But at that point, the amount of carbon-14 is so minuscule that background no, I think I said background radiation. What I mean by that is just like residual carbon-14 around contamination, essentially. A microscopic amount of contamination can make the thing look young, but it's actually incredibly ancient. this is known about. We've taken diamonds, or not diamonds. We've taken metal, like literally metal that has no carbon in it at all, and put it into our, I don't know if they're spectrophotometers or exactly what they are, but that metal reads that it has some carbon-14 in it. And so that just tells us that there's going to be a microscopic amount of it in almost any sample. So whatever the carbon-14 number is, hypothetically, it can only go so far. And so if it's older than that, which 58,000 years, and that's not even the number that I know, that I don't know if that's even the number they used, that is a very small number. And so if the potassium argon comes out to way longer than that, that's because of the known limitations of carbon-14. I'm going to make a video on this. So I'm going to write down the timestamp here because that was pretty bad. C14 happens at the 28-minute mark. Okay. I should have written down some others before. Kieran, huge supporter of the channel, always has one of the top comments. And I'm happy you're here too. Shout out.
That's one example. A second example is things are dated like lava that we know when it was formed, or rock that was formed in Mount St. Helens explosion, and the dates are wrong, but we actually saw those form. So again, I just think it's
again. So potassium argon. Okay, hold on. Gifted 5. See, Justin shouts these out all the time when he does his live streams because people do it. I don't know what this means. Thank you very much. But I have no clue what this means. I don't know what it means to gift 5 memberships. Thank you for doing it, but like, I don't know what it means. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. Potassium argon dating, potassium 40 half-life. Fuck's sake. Potassium 40 has a half-life of 1.25 billion years. Now, let's say that the potassium argon dating technique has an error of 0.00. I'm going to go crazy with this. I have not done this ahead of time. Let's say that the potassium argon, it has an error of 0.0001 or something like that. Well, if this thing formed yesterday, then we should detect that none of the, well, not literally none of the daughter product would have changed. It's just that it takes that long for half of it too. So there would be some changes there. But like, let's say, what is 0.0001 times 1.25 billion? 125,000 years. Okay. So literally the error bars for this, if the errors were microscopic 0.0001, then the plus or minus would be 125,000 years. I guarantee it's more than that. It's probably in the millions of years. But with a half-life of 1.25 billion, that's microscopic. So you get a number like 2 billion plus or minus 5 million. And what they do, and what you're going to see Duffy do later on here, is he'll just he'll do the flat earth thing. Big numbers scare me, therefore false. And he points to a discrepancy in dates. Kieran, I've donated to your efforts in more obvious units of value. That is until the dollar crashes. What do you mean until the dollar crashes? It's been crashing for the past like 5 days. Crashing harder than a Boeing airplane. faster than a Boeing airplane. Sorry.
little bit, I think we should be careful to think we can't be wrong about dates millions and billions of years ago when we're wrong about things that are less than 50 years old.
Okay, so to answer those questions, the laboratory that sample was sent to, on their website, it says that you cannot use potassium argon for samples that are that new. So again, this is like trying to detect a tooth cavity with an aircraft radar.
Something else about carbon-14. I really wish Tony's internet was a little bit better. Another thing about like with carbon dating is we've known this for decades. You can't carbon date anything that's less than around 150 years old because of nuclear testing. Basically, what I'm assuming is the nuclear testing, because that's very energetic, has created more carbon-14 than there should be, which would mean, would things appear older or younger? There's an excess of carbon-14, more than there typically is. So it would, oh man, my brain's not working. Well, if it's just a ratio, then that shouldn't matter. Shit, I don't actually know off the top of my head in what way that screws with the data, but
and the error on that, the error returned by that was 320,000 years or 3.2 million. I can't remember exactly, but it was, if you start using the same date and you get billions of years, being an error by 3.2 million is irrelevant. If the technique is only accurate to within 3.2 billion, that doesn't allow you 3.2 million. Sorry, that doesn't allow you to suggest that the technique is worthless on those larger length scales. Similarly, when we use radiometric dating on the Pompeii eruption, the Mount Vesuvius eruption, we get exactly the right date. We get exactly the date that corresponds with the historical evidence we have. So that claim is false. We can get into the shortcomings of radiocarbon dating and why young Earth creationists are very keen to present radiocarbon results. Radiocarbon, if you get a radiocarbon age from a very old sample, a fossilized sample, that means nothing. It could mean that the sample has been corrupted by, well, I've got a presentation on that. Do you want to see the reservations that you should have when somebody presents an old radiocarbon dating?
Well, I just heard something you said that sounded like begging the question to me. And you said that dating method doesn't work on something. What was the exact phrase you used?
So radiocarbon dating doesn't work on very old material.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk about that, because I have an issue with that statement. Okay. And it gets back to my example with Jack Horner. If you're going to assume your conclusion, that's what the begging the question fallacy is. If you're going to assume your conclusion that it's old and therefore say that this dating method won't work on that specimen, that's not science to me.
Okay, but you need to understand that if you...
That is.
I got to hear what he just said again.
To my example with Jack Horner. If you're going to assume your conclusion, that's what the begging the question fallacy is. If you're going to assume your conclusion that it's old and therefore say that this dating method won't work on that specimen, that's not science to me.
Okay, I don't know if he just doesn't know or get it, that there are literally limitations with carbon-14. It's like you can't measure the circumference of Earth with a ruler. You can measure the circumference of Earth with of Earth, but not with a ruler. I mean, like, you theoretically could, but it just isn't possible.
Okay, but you need to understand that if you get a young radiocarbon age from a sample, that doesn't mean that it's young, because radiocarbon has limitations. So I can only answer this question by discussing radiocarbon dating. I've got a presentation on that. Would you like to? Because these are things that are often misunderstood by lay people, and I prefer to.
Yeah, I just want to point out for people in the chat, because the people in the chat are now acting like flat earthers. They have no idea what I'm talking about in terms of original biological material found inside of dinosaur bones. And you're talking about it like
this is it's such a widely tossed around claim, Duffy. I think actually those of us, the kind of people that watch this stuff, know about those things. Okay, not to sound like that infamous Rick and Morty Twitter post from 15 years ago. The cool thing about Rick and Morty is you actually have to know a lot of stuff about like quantum mechanics to understand why it's funny. Not to sound like that, but no, Duffy, people that They do know about this.
like you do. You probably don't even care to go look up the actual research, which is in all of the main
There's nothing in the chat though. That's kind of disappointing. When somebody roasts the chat, it's always hilarious to see what the response is.
mainstream science journals. And someone even made a comment that you don't carbon-14 date something that's that old. And again, that is not science. Fortunately, even though the science community hung Mary Schweitzer for saying it was original biological material, they tried to tell her it was biofilm. Fortunately, people were able to do real actual science. And there's now been not only carbon-14, but DNA inside of these dinosaur bones. So
Oh, for fuck's sake. No, there has not been DNA found in them.
this is very significant to the age of the Earth.
Okay. Does Mary Schweitzer agree that the Earth is 6,000 years old? Because you keep on citing her work, and she doesn't agree with the conclusions that you're coming. But let's move on to the.
Why did he ask the question and then just tell? Paleontologists find possible dinosaur DNA. A report of preserved fragments of nuclei and chromatin. So chromatin is just your DNA wound around certain proteins. When was this? 2021. Okay. Oh, really? So that's all okay. Everything is paywalled. For fuck's sake. This is 2020. So there's this weird, I mean, you have to be a little bit careful. There's this weird, and it's a flat earth type of tactic where they say something really stupid, like there's no such thing as blank, or you can't have blank, or blank is in, and then you say, no, that's false. And then what they do is they find this like 0.000000001% exception to it. I'm like, oh, well, are you aware of this? As if that means what you're saying is a lie. Now, maybe we will find, and then what it makes it look like you're doing is shifting the goalpost kind of in a weird way. So maybe some of these results will work out that some chromatin protein along with some nucleic acids are found. But again, that wouldn't, they try to pass that on as if we found like organic material. And it's yes and no. So this originally with the dinosaur, with the T-Rex bone, it started off with, they said they found like living organic tissue. No, they didn't. And then they said something like they found flexible organic tissue. No, they didn't. What they found was some, I don't know if they were collagen or cartilage filaments, what exactly they were, but when rehydrated, they had a little bit of flexibility to them. But it was microscopic. Maybe microscopic's a loaded term or whatever, but it was minuscule amounts of just partial remains, heavily degraded, of this material that when they hydrated it, it had a little bit of flexibility, right? Which is not at all the same as what they're trying to claim. And again, what does that disprove the entire body of knowledge that we have? No, because, for example, I mean, there are bodies that are like we find remains of organisms that that scientists can date to 5, 10, 15,000 years old, and there's no fossilization in any of them. I wonder, you know what? I want to know, what is the youngest fossil ever found? A real fossil. Technically different things can be fossils, like the stuff in the La Brea tar pits in LA. Those get called fossils, but they're actually still the bones, and they're completely soaked with bitumen. They haven't been lithified. When we mean fossil, we typically mean rock that's replaced the bone. An insect in amber isn't that kind of fossil either. So we'd want to say petrified. What's the youngest known petrified fossil? In Yellowstone National Park, silica-rich waters from geysers and hot springs have petrified trees in just a few hundred years. This is ChatGPT telling me this, so take it with a gallon of salt. That could be really interesting. I'd be interested if it's like encrusted, or if there's actually no organic material left at all. Yeah, this is mixing it up and telling me about frozen remains. I'm not getting any real answers here. But anyways, those things like bog bodies and mammoths and whatever else, that are the age that Duffy thinks all the fossils are, have absolutely no fossilization to them whatsoever. If there are things that are millions of years old that contain, we've always said they contain no organic material, maybe we find out that some of them contain 0.01%, which is a huge overestimation. But let's just say that wouldn't, in what way does that establish that they are young? It just in no way whatsoever. That's not a dating technique. And it would be consistent with them being extremely old.
Let's move on to the
The bodies that fossilized or at Pompeii are kind of fossilized. They're really just, they have a buttery, flaky crust, but they're not really fossilized because the people's bones are still bones inside the buttery, flaky crust.
technique of carbon dating.
Great.
So carbon dating was invented in the 1940s. Carbon-14 is created by cosmogenic spallation. You get high energy particles coming into the atmosphere. They hit nitrogen. That's an illustration of carbon-14. The spallation occurs with the oxygen and the nitrogen in the atmosphere. This is radiocarbon decay. There are two styles of radiocarbon detector. The first one basically detected the beta particle emissions, the electron emissions.
It's sore, but I can kind of walk, so whatever.
The second one is mass acceleration, well, AMS. So this is mass spectrometry. You chop up the sample, you filter it, you ionize it, and then you electrical field. The amount of carbon-14 in the system is, as I said, a function of the strength of the electromagnetic field, which varies. So it's electromagnetic field. Here's an illustration of sort of variations in cosmogenic nuclides, in particular 1400, and this is more illustration of that. Okay, so what are the problems with this data set? One is sample preparation. Because the samples, we get carbon, it gets taken up by plants, the plants get eaten by herbivores, the herbivores get eaten by carnivores, everybody dies, and their remains end up in the soil. Your sample can end up encrusted with young material. It can be permineralized, which means mineral intrusions into your sample. It can also have microbial action contaminating your sample. You can also have what's called remineralization, where phosphate ions inside your mineral are replaced by young carbonate. So the presence of young carbon in your sample. The other thing that can happen is nearby radiation sources. So if you've had a radiation source that produces neutrons near your sample, it will emit neutrons, they will hit the oxygens, and they will produce carbon-14. So the presence of radiocarbon of young carbon-14 in this material is no evidence whatsoever that the sample was actually young. You have to eliminate the various other forms of error that could have happened. The other limitation on radiocarbon dating is what's called the ocean reservoir correction. Atmospheric CO2 dissolves into the ocean. It's eaten by microbes. They get eaten by up the food chain. But then the carbon actually has to travel to the north and south poles. At the north and south poles, Earth's magnetic field is very, very strong. So you don't get many cosmic rays. You don't get much carbon-14. So the carbon-14 that is found in high latitude areas has gotten there through ocean currents. And this takes time, during which the carbon-14 is already decaying. It doesn't magically stop decaying because it hasn't been eaten by an animal yet. So you need to apply an ocean reservoir correction depending on how far away from the poles you are. So there are limitations on radiocarbon dating, and the fact that a radiocarbon result yields a young age is in no way logically required.
It seemed like Will was saying, oh, the scientists are scared to, he did literally say that, that they're scared to do the carbon dating, but this whole thing, this claim about it being circular reasoning reminds me of something from Rational Answers to Stupid Questions, which is the claim that, oh, you date fossils according to the layers they're found in, but you tell us the layers, you diagnose the age of the layers based on the fossil. That's circular reasoning. What that claim and what Duffy's saying here about, oh, you can't use carbon-14 on stuff that old, therefore you're just saying it's old. It just completely ignores the entire rigorous, peer-reviewed, scrutinized body of scientific knowledge. I wouldn't even call it that. That's underselling it. The fucking enterprise that has undergone here to establish those knowns. I don't know how else to say it that way. So we are telling you the end results of the collective experiments of the knowledge, essentially. We're not just saying that it is that way because it is that way, because it is that way.
That the material, that the sample was young. There are multiple ways, there are multiple pathways for young carbon to get into an old geological sample. So this old staple of and again, like, the thing is, it's not like experts in the field have not heard these arguments. We have heard these arguments. We know why they're wrong. And it is a little frustrating that
Dude, he crashes out hardcore. It happens at about the 42-minute mark, so we'll be there soon.
The scientists who base their careers around this and around the accuracy of geochronological techniques are being told by people who don't understand these techniques how they should do science. There's a reason we don't use radiocarbon-14, and we don't accept that young radiocarbon in diamonds or coal or whatever else you're looking at means that they're young, because it doesn't. It means that your sample's contaminated. Maybe you should find a better sample.
Okay, so this is important, Tony. This is super important. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm the more objective one here on this topic. I think that it's possible that you're right about this, but I think it's also possible that it's not contamination and that it's original biological material, and that we should look into this. We should do more testing. We should look for more specimens out in the world. You sound like you are closed-minded. It has to be old. I know I'm right. Therefore, it must be contamination.
He said, we know about these claims and we know scientifically why they are false.
Game over.
Okay, so at the moment, you're sounding very much like a flat earther. This is exactly.
Oh yeah, here's a good question. Why does it did the thing where I went to go click on a comment and a new one popped up, but why does it have to be young? Yeah, I mean, it's like Duffy is saying Tony has a dogma, but what's the dogma? The dogma is the scientific research, the thing that gives us good validation for what we claim. It's valid to be scientifically dogmatic because of the scientific process. Dogmatic doesn't mean you can be open-minded and dogmatic at the same time. Whereas in Duffy's case, it's because personal revelation, the forces of magic, some sort of presupposition, in spite of evidence. You don't arrive at the truth of the Bible by investigating the world. You arrive at it by reading the Bible, and then you make the world make sense in light of your Bible. That was a good one. That was a good one. I just riffed that just now, everybody. I really like that. I hope I remember that for later. I don't know where that came from, but I really liked that. Okay, here we go.
Exactly the sort of argumentation that a flat earther takes, and the difference is the abundance of evidence. So far, I brought up one dating technique. There are several other dating techniques. There's also an abundance of evidence. How do you explain the fact that there's a 2 kilometer thick layer of glacial till in Oman?
I need to respond to something you said. All I said is that you might be right or you might be wrong, and you...
There's glacial till in Oman. Oh man, never heard that before. That's really far south, huh? Okay.
You say that I sound like a flat
earther. Yes, which is exactly what flat earthers say. Yes,
so
that's exactly what flat earthers say. Flat earthers say that it's possible to...
Forget if flat earthers say that. What is wrong with my statement that I think you might be right, Tony? I'm telling you right now, but I also think it's possible you're wrong. Yeah. What is wrong with that statement?
Because so the confidence I have in my conclusion is proportional to the abundance of evidence supporting that conclusion. We have not covered even a tiny scintilla of the available evidence supporting my conclusion. You are not aware.
Scintilla? That's a crazy... I've never heard that word before. And I don't know how to spell it either. A ribbon? I don't know. I don't know the word that he just used there. Anyways, moving on. Oh, jeez. See, I really like this Tony guy. You know, I already mentioned him earlier, so I'm gonna pick on Aaron Ra again. But you know, Tony's explanation that it's because of the preponderance of the evidence. You know, Aaron would say something like that, but he would be very quick to really absolutely blow his top and then say, because I mean, like Aaron says things like, we know that blank can't be true. You know, I'm not phrasing that perfectly or whatever, but Aaron, and like I get that they don't deserve a charitable takedown of their position because of how ridiculous their position is, but it kind of makes you sound like you're doing what they do in a way.
Of the vast majority of evidence supporting my conclusion.
I don't even know what your conclusion is. You haven't said what your conclusion is.
So my conclusion is that the preponderance of geochronological evidence directly contradicts a 10,000-year-old Earth and establishes Earth's age as 3.56 billion years, plus or minus a few million years.
Okay,
that's what the evidence suggests.
Okay, I am shocked right now, and I'm a little bit perplexed. I've been told by mainstream science that the Earth is 4.5 billion.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's right. 4.56. Sorry.
Okay, good. That makes me feel a little bit better.
I've been reading papers about stromatolites that are 3.52 million years old. So that was the number that was in my mind. But yes, 4.56 billion. You're quite right.
Okay. So someone told me recently, and I immediately knew they were wrong. They told me that multiple fields of science all independently date the Earth, and they all come up with the same answer. That is false.
Yeah, that's not false.
That is false. So Tony, here's what I'd like from you is I want you to tell me right now, other than meteorites that did not originate from the Earth, what shows us the Earth is 4.5 billion years old?
So this is where Tony crashes out. So first of all, the hypothesis is that Earth was formed from those materials, the nebular hypothesis. So I think that does establish, and he says like, well, the meteorites aren't Earth, so this would be fallacious in some way, whatever. He's known as Krakatony when he loses it at Flat Earthers. He's very passionate. Well, that's good. But no, I'll just let Tony do the talking.
Okay. So material on Earth has been dated to that far back.
No, that's false, Tony. I'm sorry. I have to stop you. Nothing from the Earth has been dated at 4.5 billion years old. Nothing.
That's true. I think the oldest things we have go to 4.2 billion years old. Maybe not quite that close. Maybe it's only in the very, very, very high threes. But it's in Australia and the Canadian Shield, which is the area like surrounding the Hudson Bay. Those are where the oldest rocks are. Let me get something else here. 4.4 billion from zircon crystals from the crust. Yeah, I mean, I know about the zircon crystal dating. I wasn't sure if ones on Earth could be dated that far back or just the meteorites. All right. Northwestern Territories in Australia, 4 billion years old. Oh, that's a Yucca Piquet. Yucca, how do you say, what's that language family? Yucca. I don't remember. It's the Yupik languages, but there's a long one. And I don't remember how to say it. I can't find it anywhere. Well, whatever. We'll just say Yupik, I guess. Nuvwagetuk? Nuvwagetuk? I don't know. Possibly. Okay, well, I mean, we'll throw that out for now. Zircon crystals up to 4.4 billion years old. These aren't rocks, but crystals embedded in sedimentary layers. And okay, I guess that's about it. So yeah, we don't get that exact number. And so, well, here, listen to what he says about this.
Yes, because it has to. Now you are actually using science denialist tactics, and I am extremely resentful of it. So do you accept then the material has been dated to 4.1 billion years old?
I'm not okay. So you feel
no, don't do this.
No,
like literally. So you're saying that the scientific material that has been dated to 4.1 billion years old isn't consistent with a 4.56 billion year old Earth. This is just mendacity, Will. And if a flat earther were doing this, you'd rip into them.
Hey Tony, 4.1 billion and 4.5 billion are insanely different numbers.
Okay. So this thing he does, 4.5 billion, 4.1 billion, those are insanely different. This creationists do this with the moon. They say, oh, well, we used the rate at which the moon retreats from the Earth to say that it could be at a maximum 1 billion years old. Therefore, it's 10,000 years old or something like that. So I did the math on my calculator. If we take 4.56 billion years old minus 4.1 billion years old, you get that, and then divide that by 4.56, we get this number. Subtract that from 1. So in other words, it's 89.91% accurate. So you can say, and we have better numbers than 4.1, I would say, but also, like, the hypothesis about Earth's formation is that it was molten at the beginning, and you wouldn't expect to find anything from those early stages. But anyways, to say that, like, he did the thing where he says big numbers scary, therefore false. Yes, 500 million years. Well, it's not quite that much. It's 400 million years is a lot, but that makes the error only about 10%. So is 90% not a valid threshold for saying for saying we're not even, it doesn't even hinge, like, it doesn't hinge on that number being correct. That number just has to be consistent with the hypothesis, and it is consistent with it.
Insanely different. And so I'm
so
establishing.
What? They're both much bigger than 10,000, aren't they?
Okay, hold on, Tony. This is important. Okay, I learned something.
So that part right there was the only part I watched, plus the stuff where he talks about mammoths at the very end. So this whole time we've been in uncharted territory, and from here on out, also uncharted
very
territory.
Very valuable in the flat Earth world, which is that they like to poke holes in the globe, but they don't like to show evidence of their position. I asked you for your conclusion because dendrochronology and ice cores are not evidence that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. And so I wanted to establish that you believe.
Will, shut up right there. Shut up right there. So again, I said that the confidence in my conclusion is based on the entirety of the evidence available to me. It is not based on dendrochronology. It is not based on ice cores, but
you can use that data to prove that the 6,000-year-old timeline is utterly unsupportable.
With dendrochronology and
scientifically, I guess.
Ice cores, I can refute your position that it's 10,000 years old. You are making a claim that it's 10,000 years old, which is instantly falsified by ice core data. It's instantly falsified by sea level data. It's instantly falsified by all geochronological data. And to claim to start picking holes, this is exactly what flat earthers do. Flat earthers,
I love how they're both doing that. This is what flat earthers do. This is what
I was going to ask you about how you explain 2-kilometer thick strata in Oman. So we have glaciological strata 2 kilometers thick in Oman. How did that get there?
Okay, I'm sorry, Tony.
When did that get there?
Sorry, Tony. I will answer you, but I can't let this go. So you said, anybody can hear this, that multiple fields of science date the Earth to the same age. That is false. The 4.5.
No, that's not false.
Okay, where does 4.5 billion years come from? That exact number, where does that come from?
It comes from the position of well, there are multiple data sets. The position of the sun on the main sequence of the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram dates the sun's age since its formation. We can look at the
Tony, we're talking about the age of the Earth. Sorry, the sun is not the age of the Earth.
Holy fucking shit. He just did. You can't look to the sky to prove the shape of the Earth. He just did. You can't look at the. That's incredible. He actually did that. Oh man, what's the timestamp for that one? 45:19. Okay. 45 minutes. Sun, Earth. I can't believe it. Well, yes, I can. Jeez. Oh man, I've had that comment up there for like an hour.
No, but the age of this is like saying that the sky has nothing to do with the floor, Will.
Ha! I promise I wasn't lying when I said I have not watched this part, and Tony said the same thing. So
that's exactly the same argument. And the fact that you are unwilling to admit it is a sign of your intellectual dishonesty, to be brutally frank. The age of the sun and the age of the formation of the solar system is very much a constraint on the age of the Earth, and maintaining otherwise is simply dishonest. We can look, for instance, at the we can determine how the Earth was formed. We can determine from the evidence available to us. And again, this is
dude. What is Katz doing? He looks like he's like furiously in the middle of something, but he's just the moderator. Doesn't he just have to sit there and be like, eh?
This is very much like saying, show me a picture of the Earth with planes flying upside down. Obviously, no zircons survive.
Yeah, he unmuted himself too. I wonder if he knows that.
From that early in the Hadean. But that doesn't mean that we can preclude a 10,000-year-old age. The fact that you will freely admit that we have geochronological data from 4.1 billion years ago, and then go on with a straight face to suggest that it's possible the Earth is 10,000 years old, is simply meretricious.
I never agreed to 4.1 billion.
Guys, can I? Sorry for jumping in. Oh shit, I'm muted. Oh no, sorry, I'm not muted. I'm just swearing for no reason. Sorry, guys. I'm just wondering. The last thing I want to do is like interrupt the conversation. I'm just going to offer this, and if you don't want it, I'll step back and shut up. I feel like you've both got things you want to say. Would now be a good time where maybe we just say, listen, Tony, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to say everything you want to say, and there'll be no interruption. Then Will, we come to you. You get 5 minutes to say everything, and then I feel like you're both trying to get something out, and you've not both quite got there. Or do you want me to just shut up and I'll let you go back to it? I don't want to stamp on your toes here. What would you both prefer?
Yeah, that's probably.
I'm fine continuing.
I'm not. I prefer to have uninterrupted ability to present stuff.
Okay, so 5 minutes with Tony.
I actually liked the back and forth there. Well, I don't really want to. I mean, well, I do want to learn new stuff, I guess.
We'll talk about other geochronological techniques. Here we're going to talk about cosmogenic exposure ages. So cosmic
I'm forcing myself to learn.
rays are highly energetic particles. They come from distant galaxies and supernova. They penetrate the sun's and the Earth's magnetic fields, they fluctuate wildly depending on the strength of the magnetic field. Here's an example of spallation by a high-energy neutron causing formation of beryllium-10, which is an exotic isotope that doesn't occur naturally. These collisions occur in the upper layers of rock. If that rock is eroded away, then the cosmogenic exposure age of the rock becomes young. So this is a pincer movement on young Earth creationism. Those are the various forms of erosion that concern. that are concerned. We've used this those are the various forms of erosion that are concerned. We've used this very broadly. So here, yeah, okay, I got the wrong presentation up, but I'm hoping, yep, okay, there you go. So here we've got the Grand Canyon. Obviously, this is a case of erosion. As the material is eroded, you would expect under a gradualist process that the material exposed first, which would be at the top, would be more exposed to cosmic rays than the material at the bottom. And indeed, this is exactly what we see. We can see.
I've never heard of that technique before, but it actually makes sense. That's cool. I like that.
That the upper layers have been exposed to cosmic rays for 10 million years, and those lower layers have been exposed for 2 million years. Conversely, when we look at 20 kilometers.
I've never heard of that before. Oh, yeah. I would like to know how they how you actually determine a number with that technique. That's cool.
Thick sedimentary layers off the coast of India. For this much sediment to have occurred in 10,000 years or whatever, you're talking about a kilometer of sediment every 1,000 years, a meter of sediment every year. So there should be no old rocks left, if that's the case. But that's not the case. There are very many old rocks still left in the Himalayas that show ages consistent with the last ice ages. So where we've got where young Earth requires that these processes should have been very rapid, they weren't very rapid. We can again show that there are layers in the Earth. These layers are coherent. They have consistent faunal assemblages in the layers. With different environments, we very much don't find, for instance, human remains or any evidence of human remains in the Ediacaran or the Cambrian or the Silurian. These organisms are very different from those today, but you can see their evolutionary development and the ages at which they develop from one another. This is what I was talking about earlier. This is an example of a diamictite. This is a particularly characteristic glacial data set that forms when highly granulated silt is discharged and then drop stones are dropped into it. Here, for instance, we see examples of diamictites from Canada, from China, from Sweden, from Greenland, from America, and on top of them, you can see that there's a capped dollar stone. So for the keel formation is the diamictite, the nantoidtillite is the diamictite, the surprise member is the diamictite. And you can see that these are very thick diamictite layers. On top of them is a capped dolomite. This is a very carbon-rich stone that is formed by the dissolving of carbon dioxide into the ocean and then the deposition of that carbon on the ocean floor. You can see that we have tens of meters of this material, and it doesn't form quickly. It forms slowly. There's a limit to how quickly you can get that carbon through the ocean, particularly if you want the life forms in the ocean to survive. Here's an example from Oman. That black area in the figure to the right is glacial debris. The scale factor is included in red. That's a 500-meter scale bar. So you can see that we have multiple phases of glaciation of Oman, resulting in glacial debris that is kilometers thick. In the young Earth creationist timeline, when did this occur? How did this occur? I will remind you that Oman is quite close to Israel, Egypt, and Babylon, so it seems unlikely that the occupants of these countries would not have noticed. We have multiple different forms of radiometric dating, and we can apply these to corals.
I'm just wondering, Tony, sorry, Tony. I'm just wondering, that seemed like quite a nice break point. I feel like if you've got 5-6 minutes, then maybe we give Will the same amount of time, and obviously then come back to you later on. Sorry. Okay, Will. So
no, that's okay. That's fine.
Great.
Will, you got the same amount of time now. Shoot.
I'm actually going to put something on the screen, by the way, but not yet. I'll tell you. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I have no training in any of this. People seem to think that you shouldn't hold an opinion on something unless you have formal training in it, which of course is absurd.
I wonder if this is what he's going to do here.
We all hold opinions on things. There's not enough time in life to research everything. Okay, so Tony, you brought up the Grand Canyon, which is great. The Grand Canyon, obviously, again, either was formed over a very long period of time or it was formed rapidly. So we've got to try to figure out with the evidence what it was. Am I correct, Tony, that geology tells us that limestone forms over very long periods of time?
I'm not an expert on limestone formation, and this is a common mistake that people make, thinking that geophysicists are geologists. I'm not. Gotcha.
Okay. So from what I've heard, limestone, it takes 1,000 years or more to even get an inch of limestone. So there is a PhD geologist who I'm going to appeal to now, since I am not one, and his name is Steve Austin. he has studied the Grand Canyon specifically for 30 years. But by the way, what's so funny?
Stone Cold Steve Austin. When you said that, I was just typing it in the chat. Stone Cold.
Okay.
I'm sorry. That's the level I'm thinking of. Sorry, mate.
Okay, gotcha. As long as you guys don't have anything against Steve Austin. So again, he's a geologist. Okay, cool. He's a PhD. He has studied the Grand Canyon for 30 years. What I love about this is I would never.
Okay, I'm gonna address this. So I ruined my wall here and here. I had the lightsabers up there, and I tried to take off the sticky material, and I ripped the drywall, the paint off, and a tiny bit of the surface. It actually looks a lot worse. The camera just doesn't pick it up perfectly. So there's really nothing stopping me from patching that. But now that it's been brought up, I'm probably gonna go to Lowe's after I'm done with this live stream. So congratulations, you shamed me into patching up. If you think that's bad, you should see the one that's on this wall. But this is where my computers are. Do I have the ability to, can I show you guys this? I can, can't I? Because if I just do this, yeah, so this is my streaming setup. That's my light, 2 webcams, and then there's just a shelf up there. A giant leaf, a dog clock that I got as a gift. But yeah, I have 2 monitors. I kind of want to put this monitor over here, but I'd have to orientate these vertically. And then yeah, you're not going to be able to see it, I guess, but there was this is up against the wall, but I tore the shit off the wall really badly right there. So yeah, thanks for that.
Personally, nothing against it. Spent 30 years of my life studying the Grand Canyon. There is a 7-foot layer of limestone across the entire Grand Canyon. It goes for 100 miles. And what he has found in this layer of limestone is nautiloid fossils. So can you go ahead and show my screen, Caps?
Yep. There you go.
This is a nautiloid. This is a marine animal. It is estimated that there are 1 billion nautiloid fossils in the 7-foot layer of limestone in the Grand Canyon. Now, these are big. The average size is the length of your arm. The biggest one they found was 7 feet. The interesting thing is that 1 out of 7 that they find standing upright on the pointy end. So this right here is a clue to the past. I don't think we're ever going to be 100% certain about the past, but this is a clue as to how the Grand Canyon was formed. I would present, Tony, that it is impossible that these marine fossils got into this 7-foot layer of limestone over a long period of time. And the fact that they're all in every direction and 1 out of 7 is up on the point means they were all buried at the same time and rapidly. So obviously you may not have heard of this, but if you haven't, definitely look him up because he's spent his career studying this one thing, and I would consider him an expert on this.
Sorry for putting you off there. I was thinking of the wrestler. I wasn't, but that
no, it's okay. I didn't know if maybe there was a negative opinion of him. I don't have anything. Okay. Yeah.
I was just being immature. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Okay. Again, like people are going to interpret things differently, and you have to try to figure out whose interpretation is right. Maybe both of them are wrong, right? For example, if you've got a polystrate fossil, one person might say, well, I think that was there, and those layers developed.
Polystrate fossils. Is Tony going to respond to any of this?
Over a long period of time. And the other side is going to say, no, I think that happened rapidly because it's going through so many layers.
Events occurring here. Let me write a timestamp for this here. 58 minutes. Polystrate. Will, if it's true that time goes back billions of years, do you really not think that something could have happened rapidly 1 million years ago, or 10 million years ago, or 100 million years ago? Like, because it happened rapidly, therefore this story of a 900-year-old man in a boat is true, is just so fucking terrible.
And it couldn't have stood for millions of years. So again,
okay, so why?
Yeah.
Well, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, don't. Well, I was just going to ask. Then why are the cosmogenic exposure ages wrong?
I've never.
What is causing the error in the? Okay, so again, I showed it was only briefly, but I showed a dozen papers on this technique. And yeah, creationists, I searched Creation Wiki for an examination of this technique, and I was unable to find anything on it because it's a it's a well-established technique. It's related to radiocarbon. The same process that forms radiocarbon is what creates these aluminium 26, beryllium 10, neon 21, all of these other all of these exotic isotopes that don't occur naturally. And why do some rocks have none of these things? Why do some rocks have lots and lots of these things? Why does the interstellar dust from the Murchison meteorite return a cosmogenic exposure age of 7 billion years? Why is that material older than anything we can find on Earth? So that you haven't heard of a technique, that you aren't aware of the evidence, is actually an argument against your position. That you've got to take all of the evidence, and one guy's opinion of what he did doesn't really count for much. Has it been subjected to peer review? Has it been?
It's easier. It's easier. It's there for anybody to go look at. You can just go to the Grand Canyon and look at it.
Have his interpretations of the data passed peer review? It's a simple question, yes or no.
I have no idea.
Okay, well, I'm going to answer it for you. No, they haven't, which means that experts in the field don't agree with his interpretation. An individual's interpretation is not sufficient.
I mean, Duffy really did that's a flat earth thing too. They say there's this very often, I haven't seen it in a while, but then again, I haven't talked to any flat earthers in a long time, but they say shit like they discount evidence. And the more recent sense of why they do that is to say, like, there is no model. We don't have a model, so you can't falsify us or whatever. But this other popular thing they've done for a long time is, I reject all the evidence. I can see for myself that it's flat. They make themselves the authority. And it really sounded like Duffy was trying to do that. Oh, hey, it's MC Toon. MC Toon, I heard you changed your decor in the background. It looks really good now.
This is why I presented dozens of papers on cosmogenic isotope data. This is why I presented many. This is why in my presentations I've got many articles on geochronological techniques. My close personal friends dated a coral to 500,000 to more than 500,000 years old, 600 to 700,000 years old, depending on the coral. I've got other colleagues that dated the earliest stromatolite to 3.57, which was the number I was, or 3.52, something like that. That was the number that was in my head earlier because I was presenting. I was preparing that figure earlier. These are people I work with. These are people whose techniques I know. And again, you've still got to get around the fact that mining companies agree that geochronological techniques are accurate. They agree that geochronological techniques produce useful results. When money depends on it, they don't get young earth creationists to do this stuff. They go to the professionals, and the professionals are able to make them money. And if young earth creationists can't do that, just as flat earthers can't plot a path across the earth, they can't track aircraft. They can't tell an aircraft which direction it should fly in or for how long in order to get from one place to another. Just the same, young earth creationists can't tell mining companies where they should be mining for their mineral deposits. And that in and of itself tells me that young earth creation doesn't have any validity. Until it can do that, it's useless.
Yeah, I don't know how Duffy's going to respond to that. Maybe he'll be like, well, what does it have to do with making money or anything like that? But it's really a what's the opposite of vindication? It's a oh man, my brain, it won't brain right now. What the hell? I can't think of the word, but it counts against the idea that this worldview you have is like follows a that it's true. You don't have like, it can't model reality. An indictment, yes, that's the word I was looking for. Or condemnation, not exactly condemnation, but it's an indictment against them. Thank you, Peter. Hey, that's my name according to our flat earth friend Free. But anyways, yeah, it's an indictment against them. Because if it's true, then it should be able to explain the world we live in reality, but it doesn't. The claim, it's not even the claim that's the opposite, but the body of knowledge that has informed the claim that is the opposite, yields results, or in other words, it's modelable. I don't know if that's a word. Maybe I'll coin it.
And there's another technique. There's a technique called amino acid racemization, which is the tendency. So all living organisms tend to have left-handed amino acids. As soon as the organism dies, the amino acids start sort of spontaneously swapping chirality. So they start turning into right-handed. And so by looking at the proportion between left-handed and right-handed amino acids, you can tell how long an organism has been dead. And the oldest ages that we've
I don't think that's how it works. Did I miss something? No, this was from before. No, I did not. I don't think I missed anything. So no, that's not how that works.
The oldest ages that we've got for that are from ostrich eggs. Well, I think they're the oldest ages. They're the oldest ages I could find. Was 3.8 million years old. These were ostrich eggs in Africa, and they were right next to a one of the samples was right next to a volcanic tuff that we could date radiometrically to the same age. So why do these techniques, why does cosmogenic exposure age dating, radiometric dating, and amino acid racemization, why do these three techniques, which use wildly different physical principles, yield consistent results?
When you say consistent, what do you mean?
I mean, if I date something using one technique, and then if I go and date it using another technique, I will get consistent results, up to errors involving sample preparation or using an incorrect technique. Because obviously, one of the counterpoints that creationists like to come back with is comparing a potassium argon date to a radiocarbon date, which I discussed earlier is due to the limitations of radiocarbon dating. It's not a reflection on potassium argon dating.
Yeah, so if what you're saying is true, I'm obviously taking your word for it, but I'm open to seeing it. I think that would be a really good argument against my position. The data I've seen, which again could be biased, is that when multiple dating methods are used, they are not similar. Is there a such thing as like a double-blind test in terms of dating something? If not, I find that highly problematic.
Well,
why would that be problematic? That there isn't the equivalent of a double-blind test. The tests are done thousands upon thousands upon thousands of times, maybe more than that. A double-blind random. The reason you introduce a double-blind randomized clinical controlled trial is because of human error and bias, but it's the human that is the test subject and the originator of the product and is administering the product. It's involved in every single step. Whereas when you do radiocarbon dating, yes, human error is possible in the lab. But the solution to that is to just do the process multiple different times in multiple different labs, and the peer review process, like literally, God damn you, I read this comment and then I started saying syllogism. Literally, the scientific process does what Duffy is asking for.
My answer was yes. The delay may have stopped that from getting to you. But yes, people don't know the ages.
Okay.
For instance, the laboratory that the Mount St. Helens result was sent to didn't know the age. And it sort of has stopped that from getting to you. But yes, people don't know the ages.
Okay.
For instance, the laboratory that the Mount St. Helens result was sent to didn't know the age.
Okay, yeah, that's a really great one. So you send it to a lab and you don't tell them even what it is, and then they come back with the same number other labs came up with. I mean, you'd have to believe in some weird kind of conspiracy that no, they send their sample to the other lab, but they tell them how old it is, and then they make the machine spit out the date they want. That's, again, we're in conspiracy silly land.
And it's sort of, as I say, had they known the age, they would have said this is not the technique to use to get an accurate result. You're using a radar, an aircraft radar to try and detect a human hair. It's not going to work.
Okay, it does sound a bit circular to me, though. It's almost like we're gonna use the method of how old we think it is.
Well, but that's like measuring distance, right? you use the tool to measure distance depending on what level of accuracy you need for the distance. You wouldn't. I don't know how to say this any more clearly. You don't use an aircraft radar to measure how wide your cupboard is. You don't use a micrometer. Neither do you use a micrometer to measure how wide your cupboard is. So we use different techniques depending on how far we're measuring. And this occurs all the time. I don't understand why it's such a problem when it comes to measuring age, when it isn't a problem when it comes to measuring distance. Similarly, time. We've got different techniques of measuring time. We've got hourglasses. We've got mechanical watches. We've got electronic watches, quartz watches, and then we've got atomic clocks, and they're working on nuclear clocks that will be even more accurate. We use.
Just imagine him sitting there like with an egg on a calendar and just being like, "Why isn't it working?"
Different instruments depending on the level of precision we need and depending on how large a signal we're looking at.
You brought up racemization, which is actually something I'm just very, very slightly familiar with. If they found unracemized amino acids in a dinosaur fossil, would that be interesting to you?
Before you answer that, Tony, I did promise you both at the beginning that once we've been going for an hour, I would just check. So, because I know you both might not have. How are you both for time before you crack on? We have been going an hour. How long were you?
I'm still okay for time.
I'm good for another 50 minutes or so.
50. Okay, so if maybe I say we go to any kind of chat in about half an hour, am I okay to set a hard stop for that and then the chat can? Okay, Tony, sorry to interrupt. Okay, so half an hour on this then. Thanks. Sorry,
can you? So the unracemized amino acids. I'd be very interested in how you distinguished between that and modern microbial action.
Okay.
I have absolutely no idea what they're talking about at this point. And we've been live for an hour and 37 minutes, so I'll probably get out of here and I guess go to fucking Lowe's just so I can patch up my wall because I got called out for it finally. God damn it. But anyways, I will, let's see. I'm going to stay on for a little bit longer. But that kind of depends on you guys. So if anybody wanted to come in, click on that pinned link. The pinned comment is a link to the StreamYard. And then just come on up. And if nobody wants to come up, then just ask questions and I will answer those. So we'll do this until it gets boring. So however long that lasts is up to you guys. Put the cat on. She's not here. And I don't want to leave to go get her. You all know that you cannot be trusted alone. So I need to change this picture back here too, because it's April. I need to change my other pictures in the house. I did this thing where I had some, it's AI, so don't lambast me, but I had some pictures done of like this mountain scenery. There's like a mountain and a forest and then a river. And I had it created in all 4 seasons. So I changed the pictures during the seasons, but I still have the winter pictures up. So I need to print the spring pictures and put those up. Is your cat vegan? No. Get low. Get low, 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 low. Low, low, low. No idea what that could possibly mean. I'm not insinuating that dating methods aren't consistent enough overall to be deemed reliable, but there are weird anomalies. Yeah, sometimes there are weird anomalies. A calendar needs a container. Oh man. Need to invest in some catnip. We have catnip, but she doesn't it doesn't do anything for her. April should be its banging month. That's funny. I don't know what a Vivaldi is. Sorry. Oh, man. Yeah, this was floated in Disc. I don't remember. It was either Discord or YouTube today. The idea. Well, I think it was Discord. Somebody said that they think perhaps Duffy just wanted to build credibility by doing this extreme flat earth thing, which was really genuinely awesome, so that he could sort of almost like now he's using fake credentials to popularize young earth creationism. I don't think it was deliberate. I'm not gonna make that accusation without knowing something else, but it would be a pretty, you couldn't even be mad at him. That's such a 4D chess move. A very expensive ad campaign for young earth creationism. Why would he not want to build credibility for his view? Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I'm just saying I don't think it was a like deliberate conspiracy or something on his part. You know, like his YouTube channel is still just called or actually no, his YouTube channel is, I don't remember what it's called, but it's not called The Final Experiment. And his background still says TFE. I mean, if he starts doing the thing with like it, like look up apologist influencers and they all have like exactly the same generic sort of YouTube setup. You know, if he starts doing that and then outputting all this different content meant to do that, then that'll sort of lend credence to it. But no, I genuinely just think he thought flat earth was so incredibly stupid and it gave what he believes in a bad name that he genuinely just wanted to do that. And if that has downstream effects, then good for him, I guess. Will said he isn't very interested in debating the topic of the age of the earth. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why he agreed to this right here, I suppose. I was actually talking with, I don't know when I floated this. But I said like let's do a final experiment for Will. Let's get some radioactive samples perhaps and send them to a laboratory and it'll be done right in front of us and they won't even know what it is and we'll get the results. He was challenged, so he accepted. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, you know, Will, he's not, I don't think he's actually dishonest. He has to say ridiculous false things because he's defending a ridiculous position. That's just going to happen. But I think he, like, you know, he believes it. And he's not a douchebag. he's quite a a decent person, I guess. I want the young Earth final experiment where you rent the TARDIS and go back to see it firsthand. Yeah, let's just go back. Let's just build the universe's largest light collector 10,000 light years away, and then we'll look at Earth and we'll see that Earth is there. And so then we'll be able to prove that Earth is not only that old. It would only cost half the money in the galaxy and take forever, but I think we should do it. What's the margin of error for this? You know, I don't remember who the bishop that calculated it was, but he calculated that it specifically happened in October, I believe. Yeah, in October. And he even said like at 4 p.m. is when it all began or whatever, or maybe that's when it all ended. But it's yeah, there is, well, actually all you have to do is look at the Hebrew calendar. What year is it in the Hebrew calendar? The year is 5,785 in the Hebrew calendar. Normally, that's a little bit different. Normally, the Christian young earth creationists, I'm pretty sure the number they give is 4004 BCE. So then it would be 6,029 years ago. Right? They usually... No, wait. No. That's totally wrong. They say Noah's flood happened 4,004 years ago. I think I mixed that up. I don't know why I'm worried about this. These are just dipshit ideas. Yeah, do the Christian young earth creationists accept the date of the Hebrew calendar? I actually don't know. Did you see his video on his god-awful abortion takes? Somebody showed one in Discord. I watched a little bit of it. And like his argument said, we can end the abortion debate in 4 words. This is a baby. And it's like, okay, does it have the right to use another person's body? So then it wouldn't even matter. That's just very weak. It was more than that. If you think the dude is a good guy, you should watch that whole video and understand his view on women. I mean, if he's like a fundamentalist Christian, then he's probably gonna have some traditional views, like maybe he thinks like women should be housemakers or whatever, and defer to their husbands or something like that. I mean, I don't think that's the difference between what makes somebody a good versus a bad person. Because I think a lot of people, they say stuff like that because they're like cheerleading for what they believe in. Like, you know, like a sports fan of like a horrible team. They go to a game and they're playing a really good team, and they'll tell you all about how they know they're gonna win. And it's like you know that you're not, right? Like you know that you're not, but they can't say that. And maybe they actually are incapable of admitting it, but they probably actually at some level know it. They just can't say it, or they can't make themselves believe it or something. I hear you, but his language... Yeah, again, I haven't watched the video, but normally what I take from that is people are, especially like if you watch my videos with Justin, like the stuff we get people to make excuses for is horrendous. And I legitimately don't think most of these people really believe that. They just have to say that because they're working backwards from a conclusion, you know? So I don't know. I mean, I do my best to apply the principle of charity, maybe to a fault, but you know, whatever. He's very insistent that women shouldn't have autonomy. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the argument, because look, if you believe it's Louis C.K. has the funny bit on this. He's like, look, I don't know. Or no, it's not Louis C.K. It's Bill Burr, right? Yeah, it's Bill Burr. He says like, look, I mean, I agree that a woman should have a right to choose. I just also think that, yeah, you're killing a person. And yeah, obviously he's a comedian, so he's funny, and I'm not exactly that funny. But he just goes over this thing and he's like, you don't get it that they think it's murder, so they're going to have this take. Like just try to understand what they think about it. Accept that it's wrong, but just kind of empathize, I guess, a little bit. And so when you're operating from that position, I guess I forgot where I was going with this, but I can understand how you get twisted into having to say things that are stupid based on that. That's really it. He really believes it. I mean, I can take your word for it. Louis C.K. knowing for being a good guy. And I corrected it. It was Bill Burr. But yeah, I mean, he's a funny comedian, but yeah, creepy guy. If Jesus isn't the Messiah, is worshiping him idolatry? Should Christians be stoned? According to Jewish law, perhaps, yes, I guess. I don't know. There's always this is actually, this is interesting. I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to try to remember this. So when you talk about horrific things in the Old Testament, what gets the excuse is that was for that time and place, or that was the old covenant. We live under the new covenant now. Okay. So never that these things were wrong. Just that it's the old covenant. So what I've tried to do this, but they I don't know. It's never been effective, but I really want to do this because I want to ask them, okay, would you be, I have the hiccups. Sorry. So would it be morally acceptable for Jews to do this today? And if the answer is yes, then like if the nation of Israel or whatever enacted capital punishment for idol worship today, and they killed Christians worshiping idols, then the Christian couldn't say that it's wrong because they're following God's commandment. I don't know. Like there are weird ways that can go. Like you can be, some Christians think all Jews go to hell. Some think that they don't. And then you'd want to say, okay, well, are Jews bound by the law that they've been given? Why would they not be? They're not part of your covenant. Then at that point, the only option is to say that, say something like what Martin Luther said, that Jews worship a false god or something like that. Or I don't even know what would even be the point of being Jewish anymore. There would be no moral constraints. Like how could there be if the law is expired, or if there's actually if there's a new covenant, but you're not a member of the covenant, so what are you supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? Do I care if you use Spanky in my Christian arguments? Hell no, go for it. What a can of worms. Yeah, it's pretty messy. Did MC Toon tell you to stop? First of all, why would he do that? Second of all, this live stream has been going. This live stream went on for an hour and 37 minutes, and then I decided I don't want to do it anymore because that's usually about as long as I can go. But no, Toon showed up almost exactly 30 minutes ago. So one thing I keep thinking about is that if slavery was too rooted in their culture to abolish, why abolish idol worship? The whole golden calf strip. Yeah, I bring this up. I bring this kind of thing up all the time. One of the more recent ones was Justin brought up. Sorry, I got distracted by a comment. One of the more recent ones was we were going over the punishment for a woman, the death penalty being given to a woman for lying about her virginity when she gets married. And it's like, well, it was for the time and the place and whatever. Like those people were sexist, so God had to give them a rule. like whatever. And it's like, why does God have to be so pathetic as to say, well, I'm gonna bow down to your culture's barbarisms and reinforce them? Like, we could say that eating shellfish was part of their culture, and then God said, yeah, never do that. But he was incapable of telling them not to. Like, it's so stupid. There's absolutely no reason God can't put abolitions on things like that, because he puts abolitions on all kinds of things. This is what made me laugh. Peterson. One time I wrote it out in quotes, or like in like air quotes or whatever, and it was really funny, but I can't remember how it went. It was something like Eric Planet Peterson, Planet Peterson, or something like that. It was funny. You'll just have to take my word for it. Hell yeah, we do. Except I think because of Doge, my checks don't come anymore. I think the Department of Government Indoctrination was actually shut down by Doge, so I don't get my shill dollars anymore. He got the shellfish thing right. You got to be evil to eat that weird shit. Yeah, some people call shellfish the bug insects of the ocean or whatever. I love shellfish. Oh man, you guys want to know how stupid I am? Like, I saw this comment or whatever, and I literally for fuck's sake, it genuinely didn't click to me. Oh yeah, MC Toon went to Antarctica with Duffy. That never crossed my mind until just now. You'd be amazed at how absent my mind can be. What are we at? All right, we're gonna go until exactly 2 hours, which is 2 minutes from now. So if you got any bangers, let them rip. They are ugly, but they taste okay with garlic butter. Yeah, that's true. That is true. That sucks. You lost all your shill dollars. Yeah, that's why I have to do YouTube live streams. The cockroach of the sea. Yeah, I've never eaten a real bug before. Are you going back to TikTok after the ban expires? I actually started posting to TikTok once a day again. Not all that long ago. When did I start doing that? On the 14th. So it's been about 3 weeks or whatever. Actually, I got a video that got over 400,000 views. You can't see that, but I don't know. Whoa, what? That can't be real. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. This app is so stupid. I post a video, 400,000 views, and then I post another video a few days later, and it gets, actually, I'm doing okay. It'll get 2,000 views. You guys want to see something insane? I'm gonna go over my time, but I'm gonna show you guys this in real time. Okay, this is my own video. Watch this. I'm going to comment. I'm going to comment stupid idiot. There. I don't know how, but I accidentally sent it. So that's my own comment on my own video. Stupid idiot. I promise you that comment is already deleted by TikTok. Yep. Literally, look at that. It's already gone. System notification. a comment you posted just now was removed for violating our community guidelines. This fucking app, guys. It's so god awful. There we go. Comment removed. Stupid idiot. And so, but guy, I gotta tell you, the shit I see on TikTok every single day. I have seen videos with millions of views of rotting corpses, of people like saying the N-word and stuff like that. It's like it never ends on this god awful app. But if you do that, then apparently that's just try saying smart idiot. You know, I would, but my account. Oh, do I have a strike on my account? Let me look. Smart idiot. That's a funny. I don't want to do it because I don't want to accidentally give myself a strike on my account, but no idea why people use that godforsaken app. Well, I made a lot of money on it last year. That's basically why. And it is fun. So, will you continue reacting to Duffy's nonsense on a later date? I do plan on doing one more video. And I'm basically just gonna pick the couple of parts from the live stream that we watched together. Well, I'm going to make a new video. I'm not going to stitch this one, but I just want to grab some of the better moments from that and then just talk about where this falls apart or whatever. Tick, all opinions are valid. Talk. No, it actually doesn't work that way. It is so incredibly selectively censorious, but in an almost inconceivable and random manner. It's just the dumbest thing. Did you ever mention Taiwan? No, I never did that. Anyways, so I said I was going to leave at 2 hours. It's been 2 hours, 2.5, 2 hours and 2.5 minutes. There we go. I don't see anything that I missed. So anyways, yeah, that was pretty funny. Actually, I should probably go live on TikTok. Oh shit, I actually was gonna do that today. Oh god, I don't want to, and I don't need to. I guess I don't have any content sitting on my computer for uploads, so I have to like do reaction videos or whatever this week. But I actually have several planned. I also have 2 debates this week. One on Saturday on Standing for Truth's channel. We're going to do some Oppo research on that guy tomorrow. And then I'm supposed to debate on Modern Day Debate against some like sycophantic right-wing Andrew Wilson simp. Jake from Rattlesnake TV. You can go look at his channel. I think that's solidified. Secular humanism versus Christianity, which isn't even something I want to really debate all that much. I'm happy to do it. I just would rather talk about science or something like that. But anyways. Do a Lowe's stream. Oh yeah, I gotta go to Lowe's. Okay, well, I'm off to Lowe's. Enjoy the outro music, everybody. I don't know if you guys have realized, but the outro music is just the extended version of my classic intro, not the live intro. That's a different song. But anyways, I will see everybody tomorrow.